The human condition is often marked by a silent, nocturnal struggle, a cyclical battle waged against compulsions that defy rational control. In the quiet solitude of the night, a profound question may surface: why can I not stop? Each capitulation to the urge, rather than providing relief, deepens a pre-existing void, leaving a residue of emptiness and self-recrimination. This recurring pattern suggests that the phenomenon at play is not merely a base desire or a failure of willpower. A more insightful diagnosis posits that such compulsive behaviors are symptomatic of a deeper, more fundamental human need. The relentless pursuit of fleeting gratification is not evidence of an addiction to lust itself, but rather a manifestation of a profound and unmet hunger for intimacy, a spiritual starvation for genuine connection in a world that often provides only its facsimiles. To comprehend the deceptive mechanics of this struggle, one might employ an allegorical framework. Imagine a human heart, trembling in the darkness of isolation, reaching for what appears to be a source of life and sustenance, a luminescent apple promising sweetness and satisfaction. The allure is powerful, offering a beacon of hope in the shadows of loneliness. Yet, upon the very first taste, the promise dissolves into bitter reality. The anticipated nourishment turns to ash, an insubstantial and gritty reminder of the illusion. This metaphor serves to illustrate the fundamental paradox of seeking profound spiritual and emotional needs through superficial means. The object of desire promises fulfillment, but delivers only disintegration, perpetuating a cycle where the search for substance is repeatedly met with profound emptiness, thereby intensifying the original state of lack. This abstract principle finds its grounding in the concrete realities of lived experience. The narrative of countless individuals involves solitary nights illuminated only by the cold glow of a screen, where a fleeting sense of satisfaction is achieved at the cost of subsequent and more enduring desolation. In these moments, the primary motivation is not a deliberate pursuit of transgression or a rebellion against moral order. Instead, it is a desperate search for a form of connection, however ephemeral or mediated, that does not carry the risk of judgment or rejection. The underlying plea is for an embrace without scorn, a moment of perceived acceptance in a state of profound alienation. This reframes the struggle from a simple moral failure to a complex and poignant attempt to medicate the pain of loneliness. A deeper analysis, integrating both neuropsychological and theological perspectives, reveals that the addiction is not to the physical act, but to the transient feeling of connection it simulates. The release of dopamine in the brain functions as a powerful, albeit temporary, analgesic for the pain of isolation. However, this biochemical reward system is merely a mechanism. The root cause is a spiritual cry for recognition and belonging. The human soul, created for communion, experiences profound distress when isolated. The compulsive behavior, therefore, can be understood as a misguided attempt to answer an existential summons, a soul crying out to be truly seen, known, and valued in its entirety. It is a flawed strategy to achieve a legitimate and fundamental human need. The resolution to this dilemma lies not in a more forceful suppression of desire, but in its radical reinterpretation and reorientation. Lust, viewed through a theological lens, need not be characterized solely as a fire of sin to be extinguished. It can be more constructively understood as the lamp of a heart thirsting for love, a powerful God-given energy that has been tragically misdirected. When this spiritual thirst is aimed at finite and fleeting sources, it can never be quenched. The central proposition of Christian soteriology is that only an infinite source can satisfy an infinite longing. The solution is to redirect this thirst toward its proper object, the divine love offered in the person of Christ, who, in the words of the Gospel of John, provides a living water so that whoever drinks of it will never be thirsty again. This theological reorientation must be accompanied by a disciplined and practical course of action. A tangible spiritual framework for transformation involves a threefold process. First, at the moment of temptation, one must pause and engage in introspection, asking the critical question, what is the true need I am trying to meet at this moment? This practice fosters self-awareness and unmasks the deeper emotional or spiritual deficit. Second, the struggle must be brought into the light through confession and accountability, shared with a trusted spiritual friend or mentor, as secrecy is the environment in which compulsions thrive. Third, the destructive behavior must be actively replaced with life-giving spiritual practices, such as prayer, worship, journaling, or engagement with nature. With each conscious choice to turn toward the light, the chains of compulsion are incrementally weakened. The journey of transformation is seldom instantaneous. It is an arduous process that often begins in a state of spiritual aridity, akin to a parched desert. The initial stages of resisting ingrained habits can feel barren and unrewarding. However, each act of honest self-confrontation and each choice for a healthier response acts as a small fissure in the hardened ground, allowing a trickle of living water to emerge. Over time, these small acts of faith and discipline accumulate, irrigating the soul and fostering new life. In this process, the volatile and consuming fire of misdirected desire gradually gives way to the steady, enduring, and generative warmth of a sanctified love, a love that is both received from and directed toward God and others. This transformative journey culminates in a profound philosophical and theological realization. True freedom is not the complete absence of struggle, but rather the conscious presence of God within that struggle. The conflict itself becomes a sacred arena for divine human encounter. This perspective radically reframes one's self-perception. The individual is not fundamentally corrupt or hopelessly broken, but is, instead, profoundly hungry for a love that the world cannot provide. This dignifies the human person even in their weakness, recasting the narrative from one of shame and condemnation to one of hope and redemption. The struggle ceases to be a sign of failure and becomes, instead, the very context in which divine strength is made perfect in weakness. This journey toward healing and freedom is not intended to be a solitary pilgrimage. The focus must expand from the isolated I to the communal we, recognizing that the human experience is one of shared vulnerability. The community of faith is composed of individuals who are all, in their own way, learning to love again with broken hearts. Within this fellowship, no one is truly alone. The practice of corporate worship and mutual intercession creates a network of support, where each person's prayer becomes a small light that helps illuminate the path for others. This collective context transforms individual struggles into a shared testimony of reliance on grace, fostering a culture of healing and encouragement. Ultimately, the path to freedom requires a definitive choice. For those who have grown weary of drawing from the old wells of temporary relief and subsequent emptiness, there is an enduring invitation to turn to the one true source of life. The core tenet of this spiritual paradigm is that divine grace is axiomatically more powerful than any chain of habit or compulsion. The conclusion of this entire exploration is a paradox of profound hope. The very point of one's greatest perceived weakness, the area of deepest shame and most persistent failure, is not a disqualification from divine love, but is precisely the starting point where God's healing work begins most powerfully.